website. It's gorgeous facility. And I just checked the website and it's very impressive. Open discussion, meetings dragging forever.
Yeah. Well, I haven't brought it down yet. They stand up to do the pledge. Yeah, because when they stand up, they usually hit it so they stand up. So I pull it down after they do the pledge. Yeah.
Yeah, you want
The vibe.
Yeah.
People here. Usually it's like, there's like usually two. They're usually staff members.
They're the professionals. Ready? They're the ones. They're the ones afterwards. Walk us through.
He'll get a kick out of it.
That's what I like about it too. It's the professional.
I sit on the rest.
Good evening, everybody.
What's the people that know stuff? What do they say?
Good evening.
You know?
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Farragut Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. Let me say this, if we had a workshop at 5:45 on the issue of noise ordinance, and if you're here for that, that's already happened. If you're not, you're welcome. You're welcome to stay. You can sign up, I guess, as under Citizens Forum, right?
Yeah, the blue cards in the back, if you want to sign up under Citizens Forum, just fill those out and bring them up to me.
So what was the result of that?
Well, we didn't take a vote. We're just trying to assess whether we should go any further with it or not, and there's been no decision made. For all practical purposes. Okay, well, before we start, I'd like to introduce the oldest of our four granddaughters, Shaylee Pratt, going on 6 years old and going into the first grade.
Woohoo! Nice.
We've got three more, two of whom are about this big. We'll start by rising for a moment of silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. First item is the approval of the agenda. Anybody have any problems with the agenda? If not, let's approve it.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is the mayor's report, and this is a happy time for me because I get to give some awards to special people, special organizations. How do we do this?
So,
Hi, Mayor and the Board Mayor Alderman. Tonight, I'm not talking well tonight. Tonight, Marty Rogers, the chairman of the Beautification Committee, is going to do our talking for the committee tonight and sort of explain the process and how we went about it. We're going to do this a little differently. We're going to show some slides of the winners, and then when we're done with that, when Marty's done with that, then we'll raise the screen and do the presentations where we have a nice backdrop for the photos tonight. So with that, Marty Rogers, our chair.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'm happy to see you and happy to see all you citizens. I am Marty Rogers, and as chairman of the Beautification Committee, I have the privilege of presenting the awards that the town of Farragut has given. I'm very proud to say this is the 30th year for these awards to be given, and they're simply called the Farragut Beautification Awards. Several members of the Beautification Committee are here, and I would like for you all to be able to see them. And they're just tickled pink because they get to stand up, and they're so excited. But anyway, Claire Ansink, Barbara Allman, Jerry Janot, Marie Leonard, Marianne McGill. Those are our present here tonight members. There are three others who had conflicts of interest, I suppose. Kathy Pierre, Betty Scott, Jeannie Stowe, and actually there is a fourth one, Mabel Sumner, unable to be here. Hardworking ladies, and a delight to serve with them. I'd also like to point out that our town support staff person is Arlene Higginbotham, and she's wonderful, and we couldn't do what we do without her help. The committee toured, so to speak, the town of Farragut in May, fighting for a position in the van. Since it won't hold the whole committee, we have to get on the phone and say, yes, I want to go real quickly so that we have a seat. And then when the van gets crowded, you wonder why you wanted that seat. But at any rate, we did in May go around for the judging. And the criteria for making the decisions and declaring the winners are landscape design, selection of plant material, maintenance, first impression, and last impression. This year, the 30th year to do the judging, but the first year to have 7 categories, 7 winners. So we're going to take a look, as Sue suggested we would do, at the winning landscaping, and then following our observation, the winners will be called down, and the Honorable Mayor Ralph McGill will present them with their plaque. The first winner, the first category, commercial office buildings. And the winner is Jefferson Federal Bank, 11916 Kingston Pike. And this is one business that it's always a pleasure to see because it's always beautifully landscaped. Next, commercial retail building, won by the Ingalls Market, 11847 Kingston Pike. And they do a wonderful job of maintaining the beauty that they create, and that makes all us grocery shoppers happy. Residential entrance, the winner is Fox Den. And this year in particular, and maybe it's true every year, there were some masterpieces in entrances to different neighborhoods of residences. So it was difficult, but we found that Fox Den's entrance was particularly welcoming. In the category of religious institution, the winner is First Baptist Concord Church of Farragut, 11704 Kingston Pike. It's been lovely for a number of years, but this year they added an area and just increased the beauty for us to enjoy. In the category retail commercial complex, the winner is Parkside Plaza, 11433 Parkside Drive. And as we all know and observe anytime we are in that area, it's a heavily traveled spot or spots, and is enjoyed not only by those of us who live and shop in Farragut, but other people who come for the day. Multiple family residential complex. When we arrived at Clarity Point, 901 Concord Road, the winter, each of us kind of oohed and awed at the beauty there. It's really quite lovely, and since that's fairly new landscaping, if you haven't seen it, you might even enjoy a little trek there just to do that. The new category added just this year was hotel, motel, and obviously being by its name, we know, you know, that people from out of town are the ones who most enjoy the grounds there. It was delightful to see the effort, obvious, that all the motels had made to make loveliness, but we felt that this was the winner, Hampton Inn. So, I hope that I did say seven. I didn't count, so I hope I said all seven. And at this time, Mayor McGill will have the official presentations. I'll call the winner's name and the representative that we are expecting to be our guest and hopeful tonight. And if you'll come forward first and be by the mayor and be offered your reward, and then the staff, someone from staff, will also take your picture. So, Jefferson Federal Bank, the winner in the commercial office building category, Stacy Wilkerson, branch manager and vice president. Ingalls Market, commercial retail building, accepting the award tonight are the store manager, Jim Meschendorf, and Joyce Sells. Accepting the award tonight for Fox Den, the winner of the residential entrance category, is Walter Green, who's in charge of the Commons area maintenance. First Baptist Church, Concord of Farragut, the religious institution, and accepting their award today is the campus operations manager, Amy Barnett. And I'm sorry, sir, I don't have your name.
This is Mike Newman, he's our landscaper, so he had to come.
Oh, very good. Thank you both for being here. Parkside Plaza, retail commercial complex, and accepting that award are Karen Flood and Polly Matherly, property managers. Clarity Point, the winner of the multi-family residential complex. The accepting people are Doug Oliver and Trish Killen. And in our newest category, the Hotel Motel, that award is being accepted by Tom O'Neill Jr. Maybe? No. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, please know the appreciation of this committee representing your town, our town, and we're very grateful for the cooperation of all category people, and especially proud of all you winners. Thank you.
Still under the agenda for the mayor's report, I have one more thing to do, and this is a proclamation for the National League of Cities Small Cities Month. Whereas small cities and towns under 50,000 population are the home to millions of Americans and constitute the vast majority of municipalities across the United States, and whereas small cities and towns strive to strengthen their communities through the provision of services and programs to improve the quality of life for all citizens, and whereas the federal government is an essential partner in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to support programs and legislation that strengthen small communities, and whereas state governments are partners in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to support key programs and legislation that strengthen communities, and whereas organizations, businesses, and citizens are partners in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to grow their efforts to make small communities a viable choice for people to live in. And whereas during these challenging economic times, the need for renewed intergovernmental partnership to support essential public services is more important than ever to ensure the safety and growth of small town America. And whereas the National League of Cities President and the Small Cities Council of the National League of Cities have declared June 2013 as Small Cities Month, now therefore I, Ralph McGill, Mayor of the town of Farragut, do hereby proclaim June 2013 as Small Cities Month, and encourages President Obama, Congress, state governments, organizations, businesses, and all citizens to recognize this event and to work together on this day and throughout the year to invest in small cities and towns to better the lives of all citizens. That's a proclamation. Where will this go? To the National League?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is Citizens Forum. Do we have anybody?
I do. The first one is Lucy God's at 12252 Oakmont Circle.
Please give us your name and address.
My name is Lucy Guaz, and I live at 12252 Oakmont Circle in Foxden Community. I am not the rooster. My name is Lucy Guaz, and I live at 12252 Oakmont Circle at the Foxden Country Club Community. It is unfortunate that this meeting is taking place tonight, as the other neighbors that are involved with this specific noise issue are out of town. One is in Europe, the other is on a cruise, and my husband is also away, and he is the left side of the brain, the composed one, the one that would be standing here and talking instead of me. We moved to Foxden 3 years ago from Texas. We chose to live here for the very same reasons most of you people do. There's an abundance of large, beautiful trees. The lots are all oversized. There is we have an unobstructed view of the golf course. The wildlife ranges from many bird species, even the occasional heron, to squirrels, skunks, rabbits, and the odd deer. But most of all, we moved into the community for the serenity and of the quiet of the neighborhood. Well, all that changed, as I will point out later. We believe the residents of Farragut should be afforded the same protection as any person residing in Knox County. Knox County has specific ordinances affecting noise abatement. Policies such as noise ordinances set guidelines for respectful behavior between community members. The absence of these guidelines creates an opportunity for abuse by community members. The Foxden Country Club could eventually put up fans on all their greens if they are not challenged. As you may be aware, Foxden Country Club installed an industrial fan on the third green during July of 2012. The fan is within 100 feet of 2 residential properties. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the size of the fan, but I have with me pictures showing, and I'll pass them around. This is a 6-foot golfer standing directly under the fan to give you a sense of the size. Ms. Mitchelson's property line to the fan, and my deck to the fan. You want to pass that? The noise output continues non-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for approximately 3 months during the summer. Mr. Largent assured me that it would be turned off when the nights go below 80 degrees. Interestingly enough, though, the fan was coincidentally turned on today, the same day as the town meeting, and the night is not even 70 degrees. It was turned off at 5 o'clock. The Foxden Country Club, as an example of why we, the residents of Farragut, require this noise ordinance is the general manager stated publicly in today's News Sentinel that their fan puts out 60 decibels at 60 feet. Interesting, he must be using the specs from a factory-controlled environment. As you can see, we measured the fan's output using a qualified engineering instrument, the decibels ranging between 80 and 90 degrees over 100 feet from the source. 95 at the source, 81 from my bedroom balcony, 82 from the property line of Ms. Mitchell. The Foxden Country Club is aware that there is no noise ordinance in Farragut, and they continue to contend that they are not violating any bylaw or ordinance. They are aware that there is a Knox County ordinance that places limits on the noise levels transmitted beyond the property. They are also aware that the continuous operation of their fan during the summer months is creating a noise nuisance to the residents who live in the proximity of the fan. The Foxden Country Club has informed these residents that their fan is necessary to protect the assets of the golf course. In the absence of any policy to protect the residents of Farragut, the Country Club has determined that the quality of their greens is more important than the noise nuisance that they are creating for their neighbors, let alone the devaluing of our property values. Even if I want to sell, I must, by real estate law, provide disclosure of the constant summer noise of the fan. In summary, the reason we are asking for the town council to support the noise ordinance is twofold. 1, to be consistent with Knox County, and 2, we approached Foxden for some compatible arrangement in the fall with running of the fan, and Mr. Largent's response was, we are going to run it 24 hours a day, period. That is why we need the ordinance, because organizations like Foxden will not compromise on something they have decided necessary. As residents of Farragut, we fully support the proposed noise ordinance. Thank you. Ms. Mitchelson, who is a neighbor that is also directly affected by this noise, has emailed me a response also, and I'm not sure if you'd like me to read it or just submit it.
Go ahead and read it.
You want me to read it? This is from Ms. Mitchelson, who is also directly involved, affected by the fan. Due to business travel out of this country, Mayor and Board of Aldermen of Town of Farragut. Due to business travel out of the country, I am unable to attend the town meeting on Thursday, June 13th, during which the proposed Town of Farragut noise ordinance will be discussed. As a result, I am writing in support of this ordinance. Passage of a noise ordinance in the Town of Farragut will provide town residents with the quiet enjoyment of their property and protect them from infringement by others on the peaceful surroundings of the town provides. An example of the necessity of a noise ordinance in the town is the fact that during July 2012, Foxden Country Club erected a commercial fan on the green near my property that ran continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until the middle of September. Usually using a commercial decibel meter that I borrowed from my employer's engineering department, I consistently measured the noise during this time to be in excess of 90 decibels at my property line. This is in violation of the 70 decibels permitted at the property line by the Knox County Noise Ordinance. In addition to the commercial decimal meter measuring 80 meters from my back deck where 2 bedrooms reside. Needless to say, since the fan ran throughout the night, this resulted in many sleepless nights and exhausted days for those in my home. Furthermore, research has proven that continuous exposure to decibel readings over 55 decibels can result in permanent hearing loss. Since this fan runs 24 hours during the summer months and is measured at 70 decibels at my deck, I am concerned about the damage that this continuous noise might cause. In addition, although Knox County has a noise ordinance, Knox County Code Enforcement told me that they did not have jurisdiction over this matter since the location of the fan was in the town of Farragut. Ironically, had I not lived in Farragut, their office would have ordered that the country club cease the utilization of this fan at any time, day or night, since it exceeded 70 decibels allowed at the property line. As a result, passage of a noise ordinance by the town of Farragut would afford the town's residents the same comfort provided by the Knox County ordinance, which for whatever reason Knox County is unable to enforce in the town of Farragut. In addition to more restrictive measures that ensures residents will be able to enjoy their surroundings in peace. Furthermore, the passage of a noise ordinance in the town of Farragut will require those that do not respect property rights of their neighbors to cease in their behavior. As an example, when I contacted Foxden Country Club during the summer of 2012 to request that the use of the commercial fan be discontinued during the overnight hours, no understanding of my situation was exhibited, and I was simply told by the club manager, "Ma'am, I am protecting a $50,000 asset, and I have been over to that fan, and it is very quiet." This attitude continued when both Dave Largent and a member of the Foxden board were invited inside my home to listen to the fan and commented that they couldn't hear any noise, even though it was obvious that it existed. In addition, although the club manager and board member did not recognize the noise heard as the fan as identifiable within my home, ironically, the fan was turned off during the hours of play of the professional golf tournament held at the country club in August, leading to the conclusion that the use of the fan during the hours of play of the tournament was disruptive. Finally, the passage of a noise ordinance in the town of Farragut will continue the tradition that the town building ordinance provides. While the town has various requirements related to building and green space on both residential and commercial development to protect the beauty of the town and the property, no noise ordinance exists to protect the peace and the tranquility of the town. As a result, the passage of a noise ordinance within the town of Farragut will provide further protection of the property values of the town and the building codes have established. Furthermore, if the town is able to enforce building ordinances, it can support a noise ordinance. All that is required is a commercial decibel meter read as a noise complaints are filed. As I stated in the beginning of this message, I will not be able to attend the town meeting scheduled for June 13 in relation to the noise ordinance. However, it is my hope that I will be able to attend all future meetings where this topic is discussed. Thank you for your time and your attention. Deanne Mitchelson. Would you like a copy of these, or?
She actually emailed us, so
Okay.
I'll have one.
Thank you.
Ms.
Do we have
Swanson,
another?
if you don't mind, if you could give us a copy of that letter, we would appreciate it for the record since you read it in. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Is there another?
Sam Rutherford.
I'm Sam Rutherford. I live closer to town, but I came out for this because I'm I'm a member of Fox Den, and this is an important item for the membership. As I understand, when I came out, that there was not going to be any conversation at the workshop, but there would be a forum like we're having now. It turned out that there was some conversation that went on at the workshop, and I understand the matter's been tabled, this particular matter.
Question of semantics.
Yeah, tabled implies an actionable item. It was my understanding that the workshop is an educational information
Okay.
opportunity. It's not an actionable item.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can get into a bunch of he said, she said stuff, but I don't think that that's going to benefit anybody here tonight. So I'll just reserve comment for another time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Gary Sidens at 12284 North Foxton Drive. Okay. Our final one is Donald Sharp at 205 Admiral Road.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Alderman. I have one complaint. I have the property down here at 11037, 11185 Kingston Pike. That is the building Farragut Cleaners is on. Since they built the road into the back of the old Farragut, the old Kroger's building, when they first built that road, they put in culverts across the creek instead of a bridge. And what happens is there's trash that builds up around the culverts. The water can't get through, so the water comes up over the top of the road. Now there's an island between the two lanes, east and west lanes, that if that was cut down, I think it's about 14 inches there. If it was cut down to make it level with the road, then the water would cross the road, and there wouldn't be any flooding on Kingston Pike at the Concord Road or in the Cleaners, either one. I just want to make a suggestion on that, and I drew a thing here. If y'all got a copy of it, okay. Well, you can see that if that in the center of the median, if it was knocked out, which it wouldn't take very much to do that, probably a couple hours work. I'd be happy to do it myself, but I don't want to mess with other people's business. So.
If I may comment on this, Mr. Sharp, thank you very much for your comments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the town engineer. Our department received your request a couple of days ago.
Okay.
I recall seeing that.
Okay.
I'd assumed it may have been answered by now, possibly not.
I haven't heard from anybody.
Okay.
No.
This is actually a private drive that is owned by the owners of the shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that the town can dictate. We can certainly pass your recommendation along,
Okay.
and if that is an issue with them, and I've seen that water go through there. It's there's a tremendous amount of water on Turkey.
When it crosses the median, it's about on the pavement. If you want to come through there when it's flooding, you want to come west to east,
Right.
not east to west.
Right.
So.
But we can pass this along to
Okay.
to the owners of the property.
Well, you tell them that I'd be happy to go down there. And do it
I'll do
myself
that.
with their permission. Okay?
I will do that. I don't know, they may already be aware of it, they should be, but we will
Well,
certainly.
I'm sure that they're aware of, even they get flooded.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's true.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
No, sir.
All right. Next item then is approval of the minutes from May 23rd.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we move to business items, and the first one is approval of committee appointments for the FY 2014.
You want to do it all at one? Okay. What we'll do is I'll go through each committee and we'll read off the names that were suggested at the earlier workshop.
All right.
For the Arts Council, you have Mary Agnes Schaefer, Sandra Dean, and Mary Ellen Rita. Beautification, you have Claire Insink, Jerry Janot, Kathy Pierre, Mabel Sumner, Miriam Miguel. The BZA is Corky Ives. Economic Development Committee is Jenny McLean Tate, Nick Myers, Phil Dangle, Naoko Bloom, and Jim Holliday. Museum Advisory Board, Libby Haynes, Steve Stowe, Carolyn Sinclair, Louis LaMarche, Carolyn Coker. The Parks and Athletics Committee is Loretta Bradley, Ron Pinchuk, Drew Carson, Tyler Mallison, and for one-year appointments is Sharon Martins and Michael Peters. Personnel Committee is Gary Schmitz, John Underwood, Regina Foy, and Joseph Jamore. School Liaison Committee is Michael Singletary, Mark Littleton, Cheyenne Nair, and Kristen Pennycuff Trent. Stormwater is Ed Whiting, Violet Friedenberg, Joe Wolf, and Visual Resources Review Board, Linda Johnson, Marty Lehman, Cynthia Hollyfield, and Jerry Benton.
You specify the 2-year terms and the 1 year on that one, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Moore, Brittany Moore was the 1-year position. And on the Athletics and Parks Council, Peters and Martins were the one-year positions.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Perhaps at this time I should announce the appointments to the Planning Commission.
Yes, sir.
We had 4 seats, one of which has been vacated. The other 3, I'm reappointing Betty Dick, Noah Myers, and Annette Brune. And the new person filling the seat that Melissa Mustard used to occupy is going to be Louise Povlin. Lives in Fox Run subdivision. So, next item is approval of contract 2013-12 traffic signal enhancements.
Yes, this contract is in response to changes that have been made to the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, which more or less dictates all signalization as well as traffic marking for virtually everyone. The new manual requires that all pedestrian signals be the countdown type signals as opposed to the walk, don't walk that most people are familiar with. If you've been around town and taken a look at our pedestrian signals, some of them already have the countdown signals that provide, I don't know, whether it's 30 seconds to cross, it counts down 30, 29, 28, 27, and gives a much better indication of just how much time you have left to get across. The idea with this contract is that we're going to replace all of the walk, don't walk pedestrian signals with those countdown, with the countdown signals. We've also taken a good inventory of all of our signals, all of our equipment, and determined that we do need new preemption equipment at 4 intersections. That's a pretty heavy expense, so we've included that in there, as well as some new pedestrian signals altogether. So this contract, we received bids on May 30th. We received only one bid on this. We have a budget of $160,000, but our single bid came from Progression Electric for $112,700. We've checked their unit prices with state averages and find that these are in keeping with the state averages. So staff recommends award of this contract to Progression Electric for their bid of $112,700.
So Darrell, if I understand this right, the Tennessee Department of Transportation is mandating that we upgrade our signals. Is that correct?
It's actually Federal Highway Administration, which oversees the manual on uniform traffic control devices. It's really a nationwide thing.
So the federal government is telling us in the town of Farragut that we need to change our crosswalk signals.
That is the new standard, yes.
Are they sending us money to do that with?
No.
So this is an unfunded mandate.
More or less, yes.
Washington is requiring us to do this. Now, our traffic signals, they're working pretty good now.
Seem to be.
We have.
We do need to make some adjustments on timing because some of our, according to the new manual, that we are actually lengthening the pedestrian crossing time to allow those residents who may not be jogging across to give them plenty of time to get across. But
do we have a problem with people getting across at our crosswalks?
I've had a few complaints over the years. Yes.
Really?
That they need more time. That it needs to allow more time to cross. But the issue with the flashing walk, don't walk signals, a lot of people have misunderstood that over the years. They don't realize that when it starts flashing, it doesn't mean that that you need to turn around and go back. If it's not flashing and you step off the curb, you have time to get across. That's the assumption. If it starts flashing, that means if you haven't stepped off the curb yet, you're really pushing it. If it's flashing and you haven't stepped off the curb, you need to wait until you can get another signal. That's what is the intent behind the current current pedestrian signals. With this, it gives a clear view to anyone who is walking through that how much time they do have.
So if they don't allow us to phase these in as ours break, wear out, or malfunction, we just have to tear all our perfectly functioning high-dollar traffic signals out and replace them with something new that some senator got paid by a lobbyist to require, so that some company can.
I'm not sure how to comment on that.
This really is.
Actually, this is not a new thing. We have seen this coming for some time. Any of the signals that have been put in the last 4 or 5 years have had the countdown signals, but we were given a date way back that this was coming, so you need to get ready for it, and so this is where we are.
Do I need to say it again?
Please
don't equate us with the federal government.
If it helps any, I'm not sure this came down during the current administration.
I was curious about the buttons. You can tell me just between us, do they really work? I mean, push a button, does that actually do anything, or does it just make us feel better? I mean, seriously.
No, I have a.
It just makes you feel
just
good.
between us.
I have a button in my office that I just occasionally push, and that's when it.
I thought that was the case. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people wanting to ask that question, Jeff.
I've always wanted to, and I saw that on the list of things, and it jogged my memory to think, I've always wanted to ask that question.
Kind of like the easy button
All right.
Staples, right?
Yeah.
As I was saying, though, this is the as part of the 2009 edition of the MUTCD.
I saw that.
We were given notice a little before that.
All right.
That doesn't make me feel any better about it.
Let's pretend we know what we're doing.
I'm going to move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Let's see.
That's a symbolic statement, folks.
Oh, me. Okay, the next one is approval of contract 2013-12 signal. We just did that one. Okay, move down to approval of contract 2014-01 road maintenance.
Is these next four items are all annual maintenance contracts that we put out each year for maintenance of various things. They include the road maintenance, that's repair of potholes, things like that. There's contract for pavement markings, contract for guardrail maintenance, and one for signal maintenance. So we can go through these fairly quickly. I would like to point out, though, that in all of these maintenance contracts, since it is maintenance over the next year, we're not sure exactly what we're going to be doing, what we're going to have to maintain. How many potholes, what type of signal work, or what type of striping we're going to have to do. So what we do, we don't have on these contracts a total bid amount. We simply look at the unit prices that are proposed by the contractors, and we compare those among the contractors proposing on a particular contract. We also look at their responsiveness in the past, if we've worked with them in the past, what type of working relationship we've had, and that's how we make our recommendation. So this first one is contract 2014-01, the annual road maintenance contract. We received 2 proposals. Their unit prices are tabulated on the second page of my memo. We received one proposal from J.G. Mullins, and the second proposal was from PRI Pavement. That's Pavement Restoration Incorporated. Over the last several years, we have used J.G. Mullins Construction. They've done an excellent job for us. But this year, Pavement Restoration Incorporated, if you look at those tabulated prices, PRI had lower unit prices than J.G. Mullins all the way down the list. They were a little lower. Now, as I said, J.G. Mullins has done excellent work for us in the past. We've always been pleased with their performance. But as far as PRI Pavement is concerned, we know Greg Ailshire, who's a principal over there, used to be with Tennessee Asphalt. We had a good relationship with him and Tennessee Asphalt. And given the fact that their unit prices are lower than J.G. Mullins this year, staff makes the recommendation that we go with Pavement Restoration Incorporated. So staff recommends award of the contract to Pavement Restoration Incorporated.
So, Darrell, if I understand this correctly, we have a budget line item amount of $65,000, and our object is to get as much goods for that as we can.
That's correct.
And use it all up.
Not necessarily to use it all up. We budget that amount because
we intend to spend that to maintain our streets. And
yes.
Get as much maintenance as we can for $1.
Right.
Okay.
You know, one comment I'd like to make, and I don't know all the different vendors, and they certainly deserve a tremendous amount of kudos for past work. But you know, it's very obvious to me as I come into the town of Farragut the great job that our staff does in overseeing these things that people take for granted. And I wanted to take a moment just tell everybody thanks for that, because in my short term as alderman, and I pay more attention to things that I took for granted before, it's noticeable. From the quality of our sidewalks to our roads, everything, it's a noticeable difference, and you can see when you enter the boundaries of this community. So I want to thank you for the great job you do. With that said, I'm proposed to make a motion for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next one then is approval of contract 2014-02 pavement markings.
this is a contract for our maintenance. It's a maintenance contract for installation of pavement markings. We received 2 proposals this year. Excuse me, one from Volunteer Highway, the other from Highway Markings. Those are tabulated on the back part of my memo. For the most part, Volunteer Highway Supply, their unit prices are lower than the unit prices from Highway Markings, particularly in the items that we tend to use the most. Also, Volunteer Highway has had this contract for the last several years. We've been very pleased with their performance. So staff recommends award of contract 2014-02 to Volunteer Highway Supply Company.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next one then is approval of contract 2014-03, guardrail maintenance.
This is award of contract for the annual guardrail maintenance. We received 2 proposals this year, one from Tennessee Guardrail Incorporated, the other from Highway Markings Incorporated. Not sure why. I don't think that's, I thought that was Lou Incorporated. Well, either way, we received 2 proposals. Tennessee Guardrail's unit prices are, for the most part, lower than those submitted by the other contractor, and they're actually a little lower than they were in 2012 and 2013. So staff makes recommendation that we award this contract to Tennessee Guardrail Incorporated.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And then the last one is approval of contract 2014-04, signal maintenance.
As the mayor said, this is the annual signal maintenance contract. We received only 1 proposal this year. That was from Progression Electric, and their unit prices are tabulated on the back part of my memo, along with their 2012 and 2013 unit prices. You can see that they are the same as fiscal year 2013 and only slightly higher from 2012. Progression Electric has always done a tremendous job for us, and we're very pleased with their performance. So staff recommends award of contract 2014-04 to Progression Electric LLC.
And so nobody else is interested in this?
No one else was interested. We had one other contractor picked up the proposal. We assumed they were going to bid, and they did not bid on it. But I will say that we have checked Progression's prices along with state averages and of course with their past bids, and their unit prices are very much in keeping. So we're okay with all the prices.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Go ahead.
And I'll
approve.
make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, moving down to ordinances. First one is ordinance 13-18, ordinance on first reading on an amendment to the Farragut zoning ordinance, chapter 4, section 8, Farragut municipal flood damage prevention regulations, to adopt the latest flood study of Turkey Creek and North Fork Turkey Creek, and to update regulations accordingly.
This amendment before you is needed in order to adopt, as you just stated, the latest flood study of Turkey Creek and North Fork Turkey Creek, but to also update our floodplain management ordinance so that the town can remain compliant with the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program in Tennessee works closely with private insurance companies to offer flood insurance to property owners and renters whose property are at risk for flooding. And in order to qualify for flood insurance, a company must join with the NFIP and agree to enforce sound floodplain management standards. The National Flood Insurance Program was created in 1968 so that folks could get flood insurance. This voluntary program is administered by the Mitigation Division of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it consists of 3 components: flood insurance, floodplain management, and flood hazard mapping. In return for the local community adopting and enforcing local floodplain management regulations, flood insurance is available. We actually have quite a fair number of folks that have residences within the floodplain, primarily in Fox Run, Wentworth, and in Village Green. Of all the natural disasters, flooding historically is responsible for the most loss of life and the greatest damage to property in the state. Ironically, this loss of life and property damage is also the most preventable. So sound floodplain management makes sense all the way around. As part of the floodplain management aspect of the regulations, the NFIP requires that buildings be constructed a minimum of 1 foot above the base flood elevation. The town has always regulated to the standard of 3 feet above the base flood elevation. And the minimum, this difference between the base flood elevation and the minimum floor elevation is called freeboard, which basically means it's a factor of safety. Excuse me. This freeboard compensates for unknown factors that contribute to flood heights that create greater damage, such as blockage of a bridge or a culvert, or the hydrological effect of urbanization on the watershed. It's a mouthful, but actually it has a real huge impact on things. And then just greater flood size. I think all of us are aware that we're seeing more and more higher intense storm events, and this is affecting flooding all over. The staff is recommending that the minimum freeboard be increased from 3 feet to 4 feet. And the reason for this is this recent study of North Fork, Turkey Creek, and Turkey Creek, the base flood elevation ranged from 2 feet to 4 feet. That means that properties that were constructed in compliance with the town's regulations per the previous flood study now are considered at risk for flooding. The Biggert Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2012 requires that FEMA and other agencies make a number of changes the way the NFIP is run. Previously, flood insurance was subsidized, and that is no longer the case. It was done previously to take that if you knowingly built, but then it was subsidized that if upon a restudy you were actually now considered at risk, your insurance was subsidized, and that subsidy is going away. And so increasing the minimum floor elevation or the freeboard to 4 feet just adds an extra level of insurance for folks within the town of Farragut. An example of this is the Pinnacle Bank, which is located at the northeast corner of Brooklawn Street and South Campbell Station Road. The bank is constructed 3 feet above the base flood elevation. The staff met with the FEMA consultant in January 2011 to review the new flood study, and at that time we were told that the base flood elevation with the North Fork, Turkey Creek, and Turkey Creek had increased from 2 to 4 feet. To say the least, we were very surprised. However, February, just a month later, we got a large storm. This is not the hailstorm where all the leaves came down. This was just a really big storm. And the water rose just shy of the lowest floor elevation of the bank. This is just a copy of the panel map with the flood information. But here's pictures from that February 28th, 2011 storm. This is Brooklawn at the corner of South Campbell Station Road. This is behind what is now Krispy Kreme in that area, the old house that used to have the Montessori school. This is in Fox Run subdivision. And this is along Kingston Pike next to Shiloh. So raising the elevation of the base floor elevation is, like I said, just a added insurance policy for folks to prevent flood damage. One of the things that we are seeing is that we don't see what I want to say the traditional 100-year or 50-year storm or whatever. What we're seeing is more quick, almost tropical storm events where we get a lot of rain in a shorter period of time, and our systems and I don't mean Farragut systems, I mean everybody's systems, is having an increasingly difficult time to handle this. This recommendation of the increase from 3 feet to 4 feet freeboard is the most significant change in the ordinance that's before you. If you actually compared the two ordinances, you would find some some minor changes, but that is by far the most significant. Most of the changes are fairly minor, but these changes keep us in compliant with the National Flood Insurance Program. An example of such a change is the elimination of the word permanent in the definition of development, because we don't want any storage of anything in the floodplain, because we don't want anything to flow down and actually obstruct culverts or bridges or that kind of thing and then cause damming up and flooding upstream. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Ordinance 13-18, and staff also recommends approval of Ordinance 13-18.
Ruth, just one additional comment that I think is important for everybody to know, and correct me if I'm wrong. If we don't adopt this, and I think you said this earlier, but I think it's so important that people understand this. If we don't adopt it, the folks that currently are required to buy flood insurance won't be able to get it.
That is correct. To give you a little bit of history of this, Farragut actually was kicked out of the flood insurance program back about 1989 or 1990 because of some unauthorized work occurred in Turkey Creek, which caused flooding. And it took a while to get back in. Fortunately, at that time, we didn't have any residences in town that had flood insurance, so it did not affect anybody. What happens if we are kicked out of the flood insurance program today? Most mortgage companies call the loan immediately because their loan is no longer secured, and it becomes very problematic. So it is imperative for us to stay in the flood insurance program. And obviously, as I said, the national requirements is only 1 foot above the base flood elevation, but I think as you look at these pictures, it's a darn good thing we had a 3-foot freeboard to begin with. That, this is a real situation, and we definitely want to stay compliant. And as your staff person, because it's extremely difficult paperwork process and everything else to get back in, really rather that not happen from that standpoint, but also for all the folks in town that do have flood insurance policies.
Do you have a feel for what percentage of those who are in a floodway or whatever do have?
If you have a mortgage, your mortgage company requires that you have flood insurance because they want to secure their loan. And on a regular basis, I will talk to mortgage companies. I have written letters for folks, what their risk is. I've given the certificates of elevation to mortgage companies. There is a company that's based out of Oklahoma, but they serve a lot of different states, and basically what they do is they are subcontracted out by mortgage companies to investigate with flood insurance. So basically, if somebody has a mortgage, they have flood insurance. Like I had a gentleman stop by today who happened to be from Louisiana and survived the Hurricane Katrina, and he came to Tennessee, and he didn't care where he lived. He was buying flood insurance because he learned the hard way of what happens, because so often people think, well, I'm nowhere near the floodplain. I don't need any flood insurance. And there's a lot of other incidences of flooding that can occur that would not necessarily be covered by your homeowner's insurance. So since it's a private matter of who has it and who doesn't, who has a mortgage and who doesn't, we don't really have any idea who actually has flood insurance. I just know that I deal with, mortgage companies and things like that with verifying locations in the floodplain and that sort of thing. I always recommend people that even if they are built above the base flood elevation, if they are adjacent to a floodplain, I recommend that they buy insurance because their premium will be prorated based on their risk, and so their rates will be very low because their risk is low. But I think after what happened in Nashville in 2010, that's a good example of where folks that never dreamed of being flooded were flooded. And Nashville has, as I mentioned in the staff memo, they had adopted their 4-foot freeboard back in prior to the 2010 flood, but they still had one subdivision where it was built to that minimum and all units are below the base flood elevation now after the remapping. And so your premiums are pretty high since they're no longer subsidized. So it is something that, you know, if we can, it's much cheaper on the front end to just elevate this building with one extra row of block than it is to retroactively try to, you know, raise it. We actually did have a house in the town of Farragut in 1994 where they came in and raised the whole slab because they did not build it high enough. And actually when the Kroger was built, some of those tenant spaces, they did not elevate high enough and they jackhammered it out and had to raise their and in light of this, that's probably a good thing.
Okay, thanks.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
While I have the podium, I'm going to take advantage of one minor thing. The town just received back their ISO rating, and the Farragut maintained its Class 3, the Class 3 classification for commercial properties, and maintained Class 4 for residential properties. And that actually is a really big deal. From the standpoint, a lot of jurisdictions were not able to maintain that because with the adoption of the new codes, there's a lot more to it, but we were proactive. You've all met our staff when we were doing the training with the adoption of the new codes. They have been very proactive with that, and so I got the letter this week that we're able to maintain our ISO rating, so I just wanted to let you all know that.
Congratulations. Well done. Thank you.
And that is great news too, because that saves our citizens
Money. Yes, it does.
Because if that ISO rating would have changed, everybody would have been paying more for home insurance.
That's very true, so we are very pleased with that.
I'm in the insurance theme tonight here.
That's
I'm
right.
done talking about it.
Next item is ordinance 13-19 fiscal year 2014 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first reading of our ordinance to adopt all of our budgets for this year: the general fund, capital investment fund, the equipment fund, insurance fund, and state street aid fund. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the staff started working back in February of this past year on a game plan for our budget and trying to determine and prioritize what we wanted to try to get accomplished in this next year for our fiscal year, which starts July 1st and ends June 30th. All of that centers around our vision for the town that the board has adopted a couple of years ago now, and we continue to make strides toward reaching that vision each and every year as part of the budget process. Part of that vision also includes goals that we try to accomplish. Each of those goals also is part of this year's budget. We try to get small accomplishments done each and every year so that hopefully in the end of 5 years we'll be able to look back and see that we've done quite a bit in accomplishing the vision and the goals that the board has adopted. This year for our budget, we have revenues projected at $8,125,547. That is actually around 8.1% higher revenues than we budgeted in FY13, the current fiscal year that we're in currently. Our projected, much of that revenue comes from our local option sales tax. Over 50% of our revenue comes from the local option sales tax. You can see from the chart in front of you, this tracks our revenues, excuse me, over year over year, month over month. And you can tell in this year, probably around November, December, we have started tracking a little higher than we have in previous years. I think much of that has to do with our new retail that we have been developed in this past year. So with that, we also have looked at our state shared taxes, which is the second largest portion of our taxes. We just recently got the numbers back from the state, and if you look at the bottom of your screen, it talks about the total per capita that you get. That's that's the amount of money, $109.46 that you get per person based on our current census count. That's actually up about $4 per person than it was last year. Much of that going toward the general fund amount. I think the state obviously had a pretty good year from the state level, and because of that, those receipts will be given back to the municipalities based on on all of their populations. Our wholesale taxes are dealing with wholesale beer, liquor, and mixed drink. This has been a relatively stable tax base for the town. It's increased slightly over the years. This year, we're being conservative in our estimate of those numbers because there was a state law change in the way the wholesale beer tax is calculated. They have estimated that it would be called a hold harmless, where we should not see any revenues decrease. We just want to make sure that that doesn't happen in this first year going forward. But I think in the future, you'll see this, especially from the wholesale beer tax, you'll see that be probably consistent. It's not going to go up very much in the future. Building permits is another source of revenue for the town. This year, we're projecting $235,500 in revenue. This is one of those sources of revenue for us that is difficult to try to gauge it's all based on development activity. You can see through the years, our peak was in 2008, and then surely right after that, the next 3 years went down, and then we started coming back up again in 2012, 13, and hopefully for next year, we're already seeing more residential home starts this year than we even had last year, so we're encouraged by that growth. Another source of revenue that I know the board's talked about a lot over the last few months has been the hall income tax. This revenue source is based on investment income that's received from individuals that live in the town. It's based on several factors, but a portion of that goes to the state and a portion goes to the local municipality. And so we're estimating actually a 20% decrease in this source of revenue from last year, again based on some legislative changes that were made at the state level where they are attempting to have more and more people be able to not be assessed the hall income tax. Overall, as you can see, our local option sales tax is 55% of our revenues. The state sales tax we talked about is 17%, and the wholesale drink taxes make up 13%. And there's some other small taxes that we have that make up the rest of our slice of pie when it comes to the revenues we receive. The other, obviously the key area, we have revenues. We also have expenditures. One thing I think that's important to notice this year is that our expenditures are actually 1.3% lower budgeted this year than they were last year. We're actually able to do and provide all the services that we provided last year for a little bit less money. Much of that has to do with some programs that may have been cut, or some large contracts that we had to do that are not part of this year's budget. 7 of 12 departments actually have their budgets decreasing from FY13 to FY14. Let me go back to this real quick. I'm not going to touch on every department in here, but I did want to touch on a couple of key things that we're going to be working on in a couple of different departments this year. One is in the IT department. We were working on recodifying the ordinance this year through the Municode system that we have. That should get our codes up to speed, up to date, make sure everything is in the proper places. So we're going to be doing that this year. In our engineering department budget, we have $50,000 in there for a transportation and infrastructure consultant that will be looking at all of our town roadways and all of the developable property that could be on those roadways, and determining cost factors of those roads and possible impacts that those developments would have on our roadway network. So that also is going to be this year's budget. The Public Works Department, they're in desperate need of new radio system. I think their radios, I don't know how old they are, but they're definitely needing a new system. And so we do have money budgeted, $18,000 for radios this year for Public Works. In our Economic Development Department, we have probably the largest increase in this department. This is mostly from the economic development initiatives that we do with our consultants and the Dogwood Arts Festival, and also the golf tournament that we have each year at Foxden. Two things we want to talk about. One is Innovation Valley. We are proposing to put $10,000 in the budget this year to be part of Innovation Valley, to reach out to that organization and get into that area. There's many municipalities and many government agencies, as well as private industry, that are part of Innovation Valley. all throughout this region, and certainly that would help us get our foot in the door and be part of that program. Another is we're putting money in for a tourism marketing and tourism branding consultant to come in and give us a master plan for the town on how we need to go forward with the tourism program, and that's also a big part of the economic development budget this year. Probably the largest source of all of our expenditures has to do with personnel, because we are a service industry, we are a service town. All municipalities are. What this budget does is maintain our 47 full-time employees, 8 part-time and 13 seasonal employees. We have proposed in this year's budget a 3% merit package, which is estimated a total cost of almost $79,000. When you add the 30% reserves that we put on top of all of our expenditures, that totals about a little over $102,000 for the year. Also, we went to the Personnel Committee and talked about moving the ranges of our grades that we have for each of our positions. If you recall, a couple years ago, we went through the class comp study with Springstead, and they came in and analyzed all the different positions we have and put them in different salary ranges and grades. This would be the third year now since we have done that study. And we looked at the CPI, we looked at the different municipalities around our area and what their ranges are for the same types of positions, and determined that a 5% salary range would be a good range to keep us in the same ballpark that we were 3 years ago. And so that would, in essence, move all the ranges that we have currently 5%. And that adjustment this year would cost us roughly $6,932 to make that change. Also looking at personnel costs as our overall operating costs, as we talked about, 62% of our costs are due to personnel, and the remaining go to operating costs. Of that personnel cost, 66% is for salary and 34% is for benefits. That salary number was a little higher a couple years ago, and we've made a lot of changes to retirement in the last couple of years, which were greatly needed. And so the benefits number has come up a little bit over the last couple of years due to the retirement changes that we've made. And we wanted to kind of give you a look back too of the last 10-year history of our revenues and expenditures. The yellowish line, the orangish line shows you the revenues that we've had, and the blue line shows you the expenditures. And obviously we need to maintain, we have to maintain a balanced budget, but we also need to maintain a pretty good bit of reserves each and every year, because those monies that we have left over go to fund capital investment program. They go to help with the State Street Aid program, also our equipment replacement fund. So again, all of these dollars that we have do get pushed out to many other funds that the town has. Just looking at our different fund balances for the different funds that we do have. The general fund this year is projected, for FY14 would be projected to have a $4.9 million fund balance. Our State Street Aid Fund would have $873,000 in it at the end of this fiscal year that we're in right now. Much of that's going to get used up here in the next couple of months as we've changed the way we do our resurfacing program. We used to do it in the fall, and we'd have it all done in the fall and spring. Now we're trying to do it in the summertime, and so that's just our funding mechanism is a little different. So we've carried over much of that money for this year until we get cranked up with that here shortly. Our capital investment fund is sitting at $8 million right now. We'll talk about the capital investment fund in just a moment. The insurance fund is at $207,000. This is much of the money that is in there is all based on the retirement plan that the board adopted a couple of years ago. There's some remaining monies left over, and we're going to be putting monies into the retirement plan that was afforded to the 5 or 6 employees here shortly to help fund that program going a little bit further out. Our equipment replacement fund has roughly $520,000 left in it in fund balance. This year for the equipment replacement fund, as we talked about in a couple of workshops, we're going to have 2 pieces of equipment to buy. One will be a John Deere Gator, and the other would be a right-of-way tractor, which is probably the bulk of that cost that we have budgeted of about $100,000. The final fund that we have that we hopefully after this year won't have is the beautification fund. We have been taking money out of that fund to pay for different activities. What we're going to do is move all those monies into our normal general fund budget that we have each and every year. So that fund will wind up going away, not this year, but for next year's budget when we go forward. Did want to talk about the CIP, because the CIP this year, we have roughly, let me get this straight, roughly in FY14 projected, we have $5.2 million in expenditures. By far the largest project that we have is improving Everett Road from Union Road to Split Rail Farm. We've talked about this in a couple different workshops. The Planning Commission also talked about it and recommended adoption of many of, I think, everything you see in front of you tonight. The only difference, the only change in this CIP that's before you in FY14 that we probably haven't discussed in a prior workshop is at the bottom of the engineering projects where it talks about I-40 and Campbell Station interchange for $40,000. We've been talking to TDOT about ways to improve and enhance that interchange. We've been working hard to try to get a sign in that area. That's probably not going to happen. But what they will let us do is beautify that corridor and put some plantings in. There's a lot of parameters around it, but we're hoping that we can get something working out this year. There is a project, a safety project that they're working on as well to lengthen the off-ramps. That's a TDOT project, not a town project. So we want to make sure whatever we do doesn't involve messing up anything when they get into it. So anyway, we're certainly continue to work on that, but that is money available to try to beautify that intersection there at Campbell Station and the I-40 off-ramp. The funding for CIP this year, $3 million is going to be from a general fund transfer. $1.568 million is going to be from CIP reserves, and $630,000 is going to be from grants that we've received. Most of those STP grants and things like that we get for road projects. Our total 5-year expenditures are $16.1 million, and our total 5-year funding, $11 million of that comes from the general fund, about $2 million a year in FY15 through FY18. 5.4 would be CIP reserves, 1.5 million would be land acquisition, and 846,000 would be grants and reimbursements. Our projected available fund balance at the end of FY 2018 is $2.1 million, and and that's available fund balance. We also have projected designated fund balance for land acquisition of $2.9 million and $871,000 for Greenway connectors, and that's at the end of FY 2018. As the board can see in your FY 2016 budget, we have a large project to do a large portion of McPhee Park phases, probably 3 and part of phase 4. That's a $6 million project. That does get your fund balance down quite a bit for that year, which means in FY 17 and 18 we'll have to not do a lot when it comes to CIP and let that reserve build back up again. So again, everything that you have before you tonight is a balanced budget. It meets our needs. It is certainly our expenditures are in check, and I would be happy to try to answer any questions that the board may have.
David, I just really want to applaud you and your team for the great job you did in educating all of us on the board, walking us through this. You once again just have done a great job, and then just to pimp the mayor a little bit. You know, he doesn't like us comparing to the feds, but you know, I made the comment a few weeks ago. I want to make again. We can write a bigger check without borrowing any money than the federal government can, and I think that's one item he'd be okay with me making a comment about.
I will echo those sentiments. Great job. Thanks.
And the staff did a great job. Allison's done a great job putting the budget together this year, as always, and all of our department heads did a great job of prioritizing their needs on what they needed for their departments. So I think all around it's been a good effort.
A question on the health insurance. That's always been an issue in the past about percentages kind of vary widely from year to year. What did we find out on that for the coming year?
Great question, because we were anticipating health insurance at the start of the year. We kind of always put a number out there that we think it's going to increase, and this year we just figured 15% increase in health insurance, given the fact that there were so many new regulations coming down and everything else. We changed brokers this year, and not that had a huge difference in it, but I think sometimes insurance companies look at that and figure what's going on, and what are they? Maybe they're going to switch companies, things like that. We did go and they tested the market. They looked at several different companies to provide our health insurance coverage, and Blue Cross Blue Shield came back basically with a 0% increase for us this year. So each of our obviously the town, as the town knows and the board knows, we pay the 100% of the cost for health insurance. So for us, that means no additional dollars per employee having to go into health insurance. Certainly next year, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. We know right now that there's going to be additional taxes that all health insurance companies will have to pay next year, based on population that you have, the number of people in the plan. And so based on that, we have a feeling we will get past those costs down to us. And obviously the utilization will be a big key next year on how we do as well. So I think we've certainly done well to get it by this year without any increase, but be looking out for next year, because that certainly could be an issue for us again.
That's a significant savings at 15% we had planned on. I had
Absolutely.
one question about the Parks and Recreation, the department budget. It mentioned it was going to be down for the coming year. I know we're anxiously awaiting the artificial turf's arrival. I'm curious what impact that has on the staff time and the project time. I can see where it might save us some, but also cost us others with increased utilization of that field year-round.
Well, right now we're allowing people to use that field until we can get the turf field in. That's the one Bermuda field that we're allowing, since we know we're going to change it out here soon. So we have to do a little bit more work out there than typical, but not a whole lot. I think when the turf comes in, it's going to take a little time to realize, or to get a good understanding from Public Works Department and the Parks Department, both how to maintain it, what we need to do, if there's any special equipment that we'll need, things like that. But I think overall, we won't be irrigating it. We won't have to necessarily go out there and cut grass every week, things like that. So we'll just have to wait and see, but we don't anticipate, I don't think, any additional operating cost from the turf field.
So, or whatever would be offset by some of the reductions of the savings on some of the other aspects.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I would like to move for approval.
I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Brings us to Town Administrator's Report.
Sorry, Mayor, I should have stayed up there. The couple things to report, or one main thing to report tonight, is our final Intro to Farragut program will be this coming Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. We'll be talking about education and economic development in our volunteer boards and committees. I know we have a couple of our citizens here that are in that class here tonight, so we appreciate them being here. But that is our last class, and then we'll have a reception and dinner for them the following month, and I'll be sending you some information about that soon. So that is all I have to report tonight.
And I know what's coming in the attorney's report, so.
You sound excited. We do need to have an executive session, if we could, please.
All right.
Okay.
Take these. Take them. Just hang on. And just have them.
Or either.
Grab a little pen for our.
We'll see if Tom wants to do, see if Tom wants to go out there.
I'm not down for that. I got shit to do. If you were asking, I don't know if you were asking.
I was asking, of course, I don't know, if it takes him an hour to go through that. I'll go in. I don't know.
Michelson, Michaelson.
I wanna see when she got started on it, 'cause I didn't know off.
What do you mean?
Where's the,
Start, it looks like they start in July 2012.
she talks about putting it in for the open.
Yeah, well, they put them in July 2012.
She's talking about the dust house there, Fox says it's not violating ordinances. Country Club says it must protect its greens, it's one, essentially an important code for the neighbors. Apparently, Fox did for some. It says he's going to run it 24 hours a day.
All right, here it is.
I said, oh, okay, this is still.
Says in
her.
addition, although the club manager and board members did not recognize the noise heard from the fan as identifiable within my home, ironically, the fan was turned off during the hours of play of the professional golf tournament held at the club in July.
Okay, and where she says if I sell, that was not in that letter, is it? If I sell, wasn't that she talking about her house if she sells?
I think she was talking about her
Hers,
house,
if
and
she
the lady was,
sells.
yeah, that she had to disclose the noise.
Basically, she's saying the same thing pretty much the other one,
Yeah.
right down in the letter, so I
Mhm.
may have to read that. All that. This is like, my dad was golf course, Fox there for years. Never heard of fans on the golf course.
I haven't either. It must be something new.
I remember last year when the calls started
Oh,
coming
my
in,
goodness.
it was awful. When the calls started coming in complaining about the noise.
They were persistent.
They were very persistent.
Well, I can see, I guess, how,
Especially if it's that loud on your
if
deck.
it's that round, yeah.
Yeah.
If it bothers you when you sleep, that's,
I just don't know why they can't turn them off just from 9 to 7 a.m. I mean, I
Nobody's
don't know
golfing
why.
that late.
They're running them, I talked to them, they're running them to cool the greens.
I thought they ran them 24 hours a day. What would 12 hours? That's the weird part. Don't run them for 12 hours and run them on high. The other
Don't put
because
it-
somebody would have
don't
to
put
go
that
out there and
kind
turn
of
them off
grass
and
on the
on,
greens.
maybe.
Yeah, it's just hot.
Willow Creek is tearing theirs up and doing overstream, they start getting complaints about their creek too.
Uh-oh, oh boy.
Well, they only got 2 golf courses in town.
No, I wear jackets here all the time. I take my jacket off when I walk to my car.
My feet are cold, my knees are cold, my hands are cold. My fingers are just dripping over my fingers.
Would that be all right, since most people have left, if I put my laptop in over there, do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. It's losing juice. Oh. Let's move over here. And then this too. Thank you. Oh, I have to bring it over, I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay.
us.
Could I check a couple more names with
Yeah.
you? David Purvis.
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 Yeah, Purvis.
One more time, I'm sorry.
Purvis.
Okay. And his address again?
He didn't sign up. I think I want to say Werndl.
Okay.
You know what this is down?
What? Gary had to have done it. That's his favorite temperature. I am freezing, and I don't know how to change that one. It's a problem.
And, Gary Simmons,
Did he speak? I didn't think he spoke.
Foxton, current president.
No, he was the guy. Well, no, Gary Siddons didn't speak.
Oh, he doesn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Thought.
No, Sam Rutherford and Gary Siddons didn't, or Sidens didn't speak.
I don't think I'm 71 at least.
See what happens.
We're after about 80.
I'm about to crack that door. I opened those doors hoping it will.
Listen to cold down.
I might stand there. Let's go. Wow, you just feel it just screaming out.
Have you seen that commercial on TV where the guy tries to change the thermostat? And he goes through like a James Bond thing with all
I wonder if that's what it sounds like.
In her life, suddenly appeared. And she couldn't understand what he was saying.
You stayed?
But she didn't know who he was. And, Bill Hotz and Associates, she thought. He came out and said, I know this man.
All right, we're back in session. You have the floor.
I had an executive session to let me bring you up to speed on a matter that involved potential litigation over the splash pad at McPhee Park Phase 2. And I explained the status of where we were on that. And you all were allowed to ask me questions about the legal issues related to that, and I think there may be a motion to be made.
I move that we settle the contract with Christopoulos and Kennedy on the McPhee Road Park improvements as per the agreement that we have just discussed.
I believe that is also per a letter that was provided.
Yes, based on the terms set out in the letter of my letter of
April
April 24 of 2013.
That's my move. So moved, yes.
Thank you very much.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's all I have tonight.
Go
Thank
do
you.
it.
Appreciate it.
And that means we are adjourned.